And every time I go and query something in O3, and I'm like, wow, I mean, it feels like it gets me.
And I don't think either Claude or OpenAI have cracked the audio part of it completely yet.
How does OpenAI make sure that people don't go from OpenAI to Claude, or then what will make people stick to their application?
If you had asked anybody 6 years ago, is AI going to become a friend to somebody first, or is it going to be able to find out how many nines there are in a number or a paragraph first? Everybody would have said, of course, AI will know how to count numbers before it can become a friend to somebody. Yet here we are.
Folks, welcome to another episode of Vibe. I'm Rajan, and I am here with my co-founder Prasanna. We are the co-founders of Upekkha, the AI accelerator. In this podcast, what we do is Prasanna and I riff off each other on what we are seeing in terms of what is happening in vertical intelligence. What we mean by vertical intelligence is the people that are building applications using the platform shift that has happened using AI. So the name of the podcast is Vibe, Vertical Intelligence and Beyond, and we'll jump right into it. Prasanna.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Vibe, Vertical Intelligence and Beyond. This is where you listen to Rajan, my co-founder and partner, and me, Prasanna, just riffing off of each other on whatever we find interesting about AI today. All right.
Okay. All right. So Prasanna, what is happening this week? What's caught your attention?
Yeah, I think a couple of people have been talking about, vibe coding, vibe debugging, vibe product management. And
What
the
is
question
Vibe
is
product
that,
management?
yeah, so I think yesterday we were discussing this as well. If product managers can get 40x better with AI, with LLMs, right? Then is it really product management anymore, right? So you product managed by vibe.
So as a ex-product manager, that's a very scary thought, right? So if you say that somebody can be like 40x better, then you're almost talking about that role not being relevant. We talked about
Yeah.
some roles going away as platform shifts happen, as
Yeah.
things change, like as ecosystems change. You don't have sysadmins anymore. You have DevOps. Looks like PM roles are also like a sysadmin in the whole aspect of product building.
Yeah, it's quite possible because some of the folks were talking about the PM role becoming part of different people's roles. So maybe in a startup, it's a CEO who takes on more of the PM role, which they might have farmed out to somebody else separately. Somewhere else, the developer takes on a little bit more of the PM role. Some other person was saying that support folks interface with customers a lot more. So maybe they should be taking on the PM role for problems that they find. And I think somebody else is saying that sales folks also talk to customers a lot. So maybe they should be doing a little bit of PMing for features that they think will help the product sell better.
Yeah, what is changing? Why is there like a 40x difference?
Yeah, I think.
Where did you hear this 40x difference? I mean, where does it come from?
Oh, the 40x difference was a tweet that I saw. Forgot who it's by.
Yeah. I think it was Sahil Lavignia who tweeted that,
Yeah.
right?
Sahil, yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Sahil's tweet. So he was talking about how the delta for PMs is a lot larger than for designers or developers. And I think one way of thinking about it is that, historically as well, the PM is a very amorphous role, and it involves a lot of communication with a lot of different stakeholders. A lot of it is, speccing the work by discussing with a lot of different stakeholders. And so, it just takes a lot of time to get everybody aligned. And historically, some of the PMs who did better were folks who would actually, go into a conversation with an artifact, whether that's a screen or some data or, interaction design or something, right? Because then that makes the conversation more concrete. Now, I think what's happening with vibe PMing is that, people can just put those thoughts into AI and come up with an entire UI, UX, which looks pretty decent. And depending on how it's set up, maybe you even come up with something in your own, whatever architecture and stack that is used internally.
It's actually crazy to think that if we just compress that whole communication, mean, like you said, the job of PM. I used to say the job of a PM is being like a translator. I mean, the customer may be talking Punjabi, and then the engineers are talking Italian, and then you're doing this translation job. And now that LLMs can do like literally a translation between Punjabi and Italian easily. So that actually brings so much of efficiency. This is what I think Nitin Gupta, one of our founder at FlightBase, he talks about, right? He's creating these community initiatives where he's teaching everybody what he's learning and saying, if you compress and if you eliminate those handoffs between a PM to an engineer to a designer, then the translation gap is much less, and you have to do much less of communication. And this is perhaps bringing some of that big compression or big difference in terms of PMs being 40x.
And I think, the other thing that I was looking at, somebody saying, there's this meme going around, right? You're using vibe coding and then continue using vibe coding to debug 40 miles. And then there's another fork which says learn what's going on, and that's 2 miles. And obviously everybody wants to continue vibe coding with the vibe debug. So I thought
that's very interesting for me. Like, see, the vibe coding, there is a subtle difference between vibe coding and vibe PMing, right? So I mean, the interesting part on what you just now described is that we talk about that in vibe coding, but we don't talk about that in vibe PMing in that sense. Because in vibe coding, what I have at least noticed is that the time to generate the code has compressed, but the time to make the code work through a lot of debugging, a lot of iteration, and if you really see that the coding plus debugging is practically equal to however you were doing it before in terms of your software development life cycle. But when you actually switch the PMing, you don't seem to have that, right? I mean, the critical
that's
step
probably because product management is already vibes. Right? I'd argue that most product managers are just using vibes to decide what features should be there and what should be there in the product, what is in this release versus what is in the next release. It's all vibes anyway. So, who wants to admit that?
Yeah, back when I was a product manager, there used to be this 3 aspects to a product manager, right? One is someone who has like customer empathy, and then someone who actually can have analytical skills, and the third part was some spidey sense of what a good product is. I think that vibe is the new name for that spidey thing, spidey sense of how good product is. But then if you think about it, that spidey sense and that vibe, that taste that Silicon Valley calls, that's the part that AI can't do, right? I mean, if you look at a lot of the code that gets generated, it all looks purple and blue. There is no difference, right? And when you look at a great designed experience, like let's say an Airbnb or something like that, then it's that aspect of people are like, oh, you know what, I instantly connected with that. So maybe the vibe in that spidey sense part is what AI cannot bring in. That's the part that cannot be replaced in vibe PMing.
I'm going to be a little contrarian on that, because before LLMs, if you had asked anybody, are we going to get an AI that can do math, or are we going to get an AI that can do poetry? Everybody would have said we are going to get AI that can do math before AI can do poetry. And yet here we are, AI is rapidly becoming the largest source of art and largest source of design, largest source of therapy, largest source of companionship. Zuckerberg wants to create 24 billion AI friends for 8 billion people. So if you had asked anybody 6 years ago or 4 years ago, is AI going to become a friend to somebody first, or is it going to be able to find out how many nines there are in a number or a paragraph first? Everybody would have said, of course AI will know how to count numbers before it can become a friend to somebody. Yet here we are. So I think the way I'm looking at it is that actually in spaces which are a little amorphous and not clear, if there is an advantage to closing the loop fast and being able to run experiments faster, then actually I feel like AI can generate more options potentially than a human can, because we get stuck, right? We have a certain point of view and we get stuck on that point of view, and getting out of that point of view into a wider space, mind space, and then choice, problem space, and then choice space it's difficult. Versus you can actually prompt an AI to think broader, think more wider, and it's not necessarily anchored to the first choice. And of course, you can always like restart the whole conversation from scratch, asking it to go in a different direction and so on, right? So I think a lot of the YB things, there is a lot of hindsight bias there in terms of, people praise designers, but that a lot of it has hindsight bias in terms of designers getting praised for what worked, versus they may have put in an equal amount of work into something else that didn't work. And so the human pin designers were from Apple. So probably in their history, they've done a lot of products that worked, but this one didn't.
So in general, the world is complex, so you're bound to get surprises. And Vicky and I work in the 0 to 1 stage with startups and founders. So the only constant here is the surprise, right? So you're right. I mean, I completely agree on that part that, most of us I thought it is the logic, it is something which is straightforward, which is mundane, repeatable. That's what computers are good at, and things that involve a little bit of what we will broadly call as creativity, humans are good at. Looks like, it's happening the opposite way. You see computers generating much better art, AI doing much better art right now than humans can think of. So those are like surprising elements. What are other surprises that has happened in the last let's say 3, 6, or maybe even 18 months with AI? Something like this, like the creativity part that is useful for, let's say, a founder or someone who's actually trying to navigate this change.
18 months in AI, you're talking about multiple lifetimes. I can't remember that far back.
Okay, let's say 3
few
months.
days, my memory extends. And that too only for things that come on Twitter in the last few days.
Right. So, okay, let's keep it down to 3 months, or let's say last 3 weeks. What surprised you?
The new one that came, and this is not a very big surprise, but it's still good to see. Quen is the model launched by Alibaba a couple of days ago, and they now have a reasoning model which has just 600 million parameters. And the next largest model is 1.7 billion. So they've created the smallest model in the series that they've launched is 600 million. And it's a reasoning model, so it can think. It has modes, so you can put it in a reasoning mode or a non-reasoning mode, I think. And it's not bad at all from a reasoning standpoint, right? And you can probably run this on a decent, any decent.
Why has this caught your interest? Yesterday, I also remember you mentioning this. Like, for
right?
someone who doesn't understand the difference between parameters, why are you talking about the parameters?
Yeah. So the cost of running and getting an output from an LLM is proportional to the number of parameters. And the other problem is that all the parameters have to fit into memory. So you need that much RAM and in your GPU, so your GPU RAM, video RAM, in order to be able to run that model. And so the original models with GPT and the original Llama models, all of those were upwards of 30 billion parameters. And so the most expensive consumer grade graphics card that you can buy is about 32 billion parameters. After that, you have to go for professional commercial grade hardware, which gets insanely expensive, right?
Expensive, that's right.
And MacBooks have unified memory, and typically you can get MacBooks with 16 GB, 24 GB RAM, and beyond that also now you can get this year, but they become expensive pretty fast. Now a model like this which is performing pretty well at a 600 million parameters and 1.7 billion parameters can be run locally very easily, and
inside a laptop,
and potentially like inside a cell phone as well. What that means is that suddenly becomes possible to have a reasoning capable AI agent running locally, extremely huge, because best reasoning models these days, we don't even know how big they are. If you're looking at a O3 or Claude 3.7 thinking model, very expensive, very large, crazy cost to run them. And suddenly, and of course, I'm not saying that the 600 million parameter model is anywhere close to the other reasoning models. The reason I am interested particularly by this is because The larger a model is, the more parameters it has. That means that it also has a lot of world knowledge, but that world knowledge may lead to hallucination. So if we are able to get a very small model that can do more of what you were saying, which is logic and reasoning and things like that, without having that world knowledge, and if it's able to do that reasoning well across different areas, then by essentially stripping out that world knowledge, you are going to have a model which can work very well as an agent. So what do you want from an agent? You want an agent to be able to think, you want an agent to be able to figure out what to do, you want an agent to be able to use tools, but you don't want an agent to hallucinate, right? You want an agent to have only the context of what you've given it and to make decisions with that context and not apply some other context which may be true or not true, or relevant or not relevant in this. So for that kind of an application, what is happening in many of the workflows that I see will need many agents, many reasoning agents, many reasoning steps. And if in each of those steps you have a high chance of hallucinating, then overall hallucination problem becomes larger and larger. But if you're able to get a reasoning model that's very small, doesn't apply too much world knowledge, uses the context, stays within that context, and is able to do reasoning well, then that's brilliant for an agent. And if you have workflows which require a lot of agentic steps, where little bit of reasoning is required with little bit of context, then this model becomes extremely powerful to run many of them.
Got it. So, what you're saying is because of its ability to reason, given its size and the strength in reason, it can actually be a very good model for agentic step, which means that a lot of people who are thinking about workflow redesign can actually look at this as an option. And the surprising part was you didn't expect it to be so small and do in reasoning so well.
Correct.
Got it. For me, I would say that my biggest surprise for the last 6-7 months is O3. And you know that how much of a Anthropic fan I'd been. Yeah, Claude fanatic I was. And then I think I told you the day they launched the $200 plan, immediately signed up saying that I'm already using 2 accounts. This is not enough for me. And I signed up for the $200 plan immediately. But then, when I started using O3, and I think I might have shared this with you, that the last 3 weeks, I'm seeing that I'm using O3, all ChatGPT related models. I mean, O3, I keep getting signed out. But the combination of O3, O4 Muni, and O4, I'm seeing myself that I've switched to the ChatGPT side of the world, and I didn't expect this to happen, right? And I was thinking about it. I think I don't know if they're doing any specific algorithmic change or anything like that. Maybe this is really scaling law at work. Every 2-3 months, you see something which feels like a step up or a jump up.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like a big surprise for me, I would say, in the last few weeks. And every time I go and query something in O3 and I'm like, wow, I mean, it feels like it gets me. Right. Yeah. And some of these memes and prompts that are going around saying, ask it what, given what you know about me so far, tell me about myself, it gives some really eerie answers, right? So memory and this jump up in model performance, where it feels like it really gets me is something that was surprising. I mean, I don't know much about the whole sycophant feeling that O3 is giving. I'm not I've not faced that, but just that it feels very close to, okay, this is what I thought and this is what the system is able to sort of respond.
No, the sycophantic thing is more 4.0 rather than O3. It's not in O3.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. So correct. So the sycophant thing is more on the 4.0 side, not on O3. That's right. So that's the part that I think sort of completely changed my view on. Okay, things can happen so fast. So that actually made me wonder. Then, in places like this, how do people keep them sticky? Right. So, for 7 months, I was like an Anthropic fanboy, and then I never thought I'm going to go back to any other model, and then O3 comes, and then I'm switching. And I wonder, how people build applications where.
See, I think you probably got attached too soon, I would say. And I think the tech is changing so fast that I don't think anybody's out of the game. I think if Gemini 2.5 Pro is supposed to be pretty good, I found it pretty useful, but I find myself coming back to O3 and O4 Mini, so that's what I end up using more. But I think so much has not yet been done that it's quite possible that ChatGPT and OpenAI folks themselves may end up being in a cul-de-sac from which they have to back out, to come back to another track. I think that's quite possible. And that's the argument that, has been made by other people as well, that we don't know whether this is the track that's going to get us there. While it seems more and more likely that as we get further along, that this is going to be the way that we get to ASI or AGI or whatever else. I think the one question is this good enough, or when do we know something is good enough is a question. And the other is that, is there a different UX or is there a different interface that we will feel that's even more natural than this? And we are, as users, we are very textual users, we are very text heavy users, we are very verbal users. So for us paradigm, this UX is working really well. But a lot of folks are visual. A lot of folks want to hear things, and I don't think either Claude or OpenAI have cracked the audio part of it completely yet. Because even though audio is there, it's not there yet, right? Obviously, it's much better than it was, but it's not there. And so I think those two things will mean that a lot of different people will end up using different models over a period of time, and we may end up and then there's another argument which is saying that, hey, you may want to have a army of different types of intelligences and have them discuss among each other to come up with something. So one of our startups has created a UI for AIs to debate something and come up with a final statement on any question that you ask. So those kind of things might be interfaces changes that we may go into as well. So it's not, I think that thinking that one of them has won now is probably not, may not.
I'm not worried about ASI or AGI, right? We spoke about it before, many a times it becomes like an academic question. What happens is that you're sometimes a user, then you put a product mindset, and then you put together from an investor perspective. I'm wondering that, if both these companies are just releasing such good models after some time, and people keep ping-ponging from, let's say, OpenAI to Claude to Gemini and then back to Claude, then where is product retention, right? Where do you find retention? The only answer that I could find so far was in OpenAI, they have this task feature, which I thought was very, very, nice to have type of a feature. But what this tasks thing is doing is if I do some search and it leads to a task, then, the task is sending me a reminder every day saying, oh, what, this is the task. Did you do this task, right? So then I come back to the product. So the question really is that, if it is only the model strength, and the model strength is becoming some step up every 2-3 months by a different player, then, people are jumping. How do you actually create that retention? How does OpenAI make sure that, people don't go from OpenAI to Claude or vice versa? And that's something that not just at the model level or at the ChatGPT level, but practically everybody who's building a product have to think about, right? Saying that if they're all going to sort of power the application through the same AI, and the AI becomes better and they actually use a router to switch between, then what will make people stick to their application? Right? So that's a very important question as people are building products in the AI era.
So I think the other side of things is that if you want the AI to start doing things for you, then how are you empowering the AI? Does it have your credit card? What decisions does it make for you? How well does it know your choices? And all of that, right? So the agent part of it, which is doing stuff for you, is something that I think Microsoft would have liked to own. But now OpenAI sees that they want to own the end user experience and not cede it to somebody else. So I think that's where, are we looking at it as truly doing things for you with your preferences, with your credit card, and all of that stuff that you may not be ready to give to too many different agents. So then that will narrow the pool in terms of who you trust, your wallet and your but I think it's way too early for for all of us to, or for them, right? I don't think any of these things are frozen, and I think they're going to find more and more stuff, and obviously it will not be only them that find stuff. So, as an example, I was talking to Kranti, a founder we work with, and he was talking about how the inputs and outputs from LLMs today are very flat. They're very textual, and he's talking about how that's a very poor means of communication. How can we get the communication to be more visual? Obviously, we humans can grok things much faster and understand things much more deeply when it's visually presented. So what's a possible interface for that? How do you do that? How do you get the LLM to do that? How do you then interface with the AI in a more visual manner? All of those things are there to be figured out before the final winner emerges from this AI battle.
Yeah, true. I think it has got to do more with deeply understanding consumer psychology, and then learning and mirroring from that. Like, people thought memory was a feature like this, and that's where Inflection.ai bet on that. Figured out that a memory is not that. Even ChatGPT released memory, and there are good things and bad things about the memory that ChatGPT released.
Yep.
But you really have to figure out whether it is that personal preference. If you know that you're storing your credit card with a particular GPT or an agent, then that will be your preferred one over others, and that is what will lead people to stick rather than switch out. Those are all things that is yet to be figured out. I think at least at this point in time, we are living in consumer surplus.
Yeah.
All these companies are spending billions of dollars, right? Like how usually any tech shift happens, right? I remember 10 years ago, it was all companies were all investors were pouring money into e-commerce company and cab companies, and then consumers were the beneficiaries of that. That's how we got Uber, Flipkart, and others. So we are in that phase of consumer surplus when it comes to AI, totally. And as things mature, then maybe they'll be a lot more rational about where they're spending their money. Awesome. So Prasanna, I think for today, let's wrap up here. If you have any last comment to make before we sign off.
AI is changing the world. Did you enjoy this episode? Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We're on all the popular podcasting platforms. Leave us a comment with your questions and thoughts. I'd love to hear from you so we can go through this exciting journey together.